Howdy, Mike McCoy here. Still trying to figure out this GoPro, but I'm getting a little better at it, I guess. Maybe worse, who knows. But I thought I'd make another talking video. It's cold and nasty outside. We can't do nothing down at the mill today. And watching these logger videos, it stirred up memories of logging. I've not logged in several years, and made me miss it a little bit, I guess. Just seeing these big trees cut and stuff. That's a good feeling to lay down a tree like 3 or 4 foot through and it go where you want it to go. And I enjoyed doing that. I'd forgot how much. But one of the main reasons I quit logging was a few years before I actually quit. The old guy that I started with wanted me to help him do a little job out here not far from home. It's in the town of Weaverville. And there was a factory out there, and they'd built new, and we'd cut some of the timber on it when they constructed the factory, and they was wanting to expand. They was wanting to cut some more, or cut the rest of it. And I told him, I said, yeah, I'll help you cut it. So me and the guy that worked for me took my bulldozer out there, and it was me and him and Jack's son, Jack's grandson, Jack's son-in-law, and Jack's neighbor, all in this little confined space. I'm talking less than 2 acres. Probably, it was tight in there, and we had 2 bulldozers in there working. And I seen right off the bat, this was a dangerous situation because there's just way too many people there. Jack's neighbor was elderly. He was probably up in his late 70s, maybe early 80s. And he was sitting there on a stump, and I just know the tree was going to hit him for it. He seen the tree coming, but the man was so old and feeble he couldn't hardly get up. And he finally got out of the way. And when that happened, I told the guys working for me, I said, you just sort of get over there somewhere out of the way. I said, somebody's getting ready to get hurt here, for it's way too crowded here. Well, Jack and his boy was over there. Jack was on the dozer and his boy was a cutting. And there was a poplar that growed up, and probably less than a foot up out of the ground, it made 2 trees. And they was good sized trees. Both of them was better than 2 foot through, I would say. And his boy was in there trying to cut them, and there was a small rock ledge above that. It was on the side of a hill, pretty steep hill. And Jack had got the bulldozer up there above it. And his boy's name was Rick, I think. He was down there under it a-cutting. And he couldn't really see what he was doing. It was a bad place right there. And Rick's son, who wasn't but about 10, 12 years old, he couldn't have been over 12. And Rick's brother-in-law was down there cutting up firewood, about 50 feet from where they was pushing on this tree. And something went wrong. Rick cut the part he left to hold, and he cut it, or something went wrong, and the tree fell to the side. And when it did, it headed right toward Rick's son and brother-in-law. It was down there cutting up firewood, and everybody started screaming at them, and they broke to run. And the son-in-law, actually, he cleared it. He might have got hit just a little. Just the tips of the limbs hit him, maybe, if that. But that boy just run right straight down that tree, and it fell right down on top of it. I just know he was killed. I don't believe I've ever been any more scared in my life. And, it's one thing to see a grown man get hurt or killed in the woods, but it's an entirely different thing to see just a young'un like that. He was really small. And we run over there, and I can't remember if we had to cut the tree off of him or it knocked him away from it. But the very top, it hit him. And it broke his collarbone in his arm, I think. and he was more or less knocked out. He was moving, but he was out of it. And somebody from a factory, I guess, was watching us cut, and they hollered, "We've called 911." And I run this as hard as I could up to the main road there to guide the ambulance down there. For really and truly, I didn't want to be there if the boy was dying. I just didn't want to be there. And as soon as the ambulance come, we got him in the ambulance, and away they went. A couple of days later, we finished the job. And I mean, it wasn't nothing of a job. I don't even know why I was there, for one person could have finished it easily. But ever since then, that really bared on my mind. Pretty much every time I'd cut a tree that was very bit dangerous, I'd think about that. And you don't need thoughts like that running through your head if you're cutting timber. You know, it'll make you doubt yourself. And I never did really care nothing about cutting timber after that. I could still do it, but I didn't like it. I don't think I ever cut a big tree after that, or a tree that was dangerous after that, without thinking about that and just having that scenario run through my mind. And the kid who got hurt, he was a good kid. He was about the same age as my son. He was born probably in the late 70s, maybe early 80s. And about 10 years after that, him and a bunch of boys was out having a big time like young men will do. He may have still been a teenager. I don't know. If he was, he's 18, 19, 20 years old. They wrecked the truck and he got killed. And I think of him often, for he was a good kid. He never bothered nobody. And, you know, not get robbed of your life that soon, that's kind of sad. And I thought he was killed when that tree fell on him. But that's the reason I don't really care for cutting timber anymore. And it just had an effect on me. And something I wished I'd never seen, never been a part of, really. For, you know, I knew the danger was there, and I didn't do nothing about it. And that kind of bothers me, that I didn't speak up and say we need to clear some of these people out of here. And you know, that's hindsight. And it really wasn't my job, and it wasn't my place to do that. So that was the reason logging wasn't, or the reason timber cutting wasn't no fun anymore. But I've got back a watching these fellers like Logger Wade and a few more, and it makes you kind of yearn for the woods, you know. Catch you looking at like Bailey's logging supplies at timber cutting saws. And I've got an old place in Madison County, and it's ready to be cut again. I mentioned something about it to my wife the other night. She said, "No," said, "you ain't gonna be cutting no more timber." Said, "You ain't able. We just ain't gonna do that." And she was right. I mean, it's just a pipe dream, but you know, that's something that once you ever do it, it's hard to get away from. And I'm not able to cut timber. I'm too fat. I'm too big. I'm too old. My health ain't no good. I don't need to be in the woods for cutting timber. Is somebody that's in good shape sport. Somebody can get out of the way. And something said on Logger Wade's video the other day about stump jumping, and the techniques that these guys use is so far ahead of that. That's stump jumping today would be like trying to cut timber with a crosscut saw. You just don't want to do that. I mean, they're miles ahead of that technique of cutting, and way safer and way better, and that's good. They've got people that goes around and shows these guys the ins and outs of cutting timber, and that's one of the best things that ever happened. For before that, there wasn't much of that going on, and I'm sure these loggers appreciate that. If they don't, they should. They learn a lot from these people that goes around and teaches that course, and makes them a better timber cutter, makes them a safer timber cutter, more productive, and that's what it's all about. You know, you've got to go to the woods and you've got to get the tree down in a timely fashion. You can't cut one tree a day, you'd starve to death. So that's my thoughts on it. Talk to you later.